Hello, Greenwood. Well, it's been a wild ride in this General Assembly down there in Columbia this week and for the last few weeks. It's week 8 of the 18-week session, and it's getting to where it's a little late for bills to get out of committee to go to the floor. On March 22nd, the House will begin budget week. They will spend all week deliberating the budget and then pass it on to the House. The General Assembly looks a little different this year because the Republican Party has the supermajority, and they are kind of feeling empowered now. And this has results outside of legislation. One of those includes electing judges. You might not know that South Carolina is only one of 2 states in the country that allows legislatures to elect judges in the state. And so the Republicans are getting to control which judges are elected this year and next year. So it's a little bit harder to stop bills this year than it was before, but we're going to try, and we're going to talk about kinds of justice that we're aiming for as Democrats and how it's coming along in the legislature. And the first kind of justice I want to talk about is economic justice. And there's this huge bill that just passed the Senate to create a bonding for the Charleston Port exhibit. That is Senate Bill 491 that would allow the state to borrow up to $550 million to expand rail access to the Port of Charleston and build barge infrastructure for moving containers from docks to trains. This would double the capacity of the port and reduce the number of transport trucks on Charleston area roads. This is the first bond that will be issued by the state in over 20 years. In the debate for this, it was brought up that the General Assembly in 2009 also established the bill for building a deep water port in Jasper County on the Savannah River. But that project never came to fruition because the port in Charleston needed to be deepened in order to stay competitive and therefore stay open. And now Jasper is going to work with the Georgia Port Authority to work on getting another deep water port in Jasper County. And that could be an economic game changer for the southern tip of the state, which infamously has been called the corridor of shame. I do want to say that mitigation for neighborhood displacement and environmental concerns is included in the plans for the Charleston Port expansion. I say this is part of economic justice because the number of cargo containers going in and out of Charleston corresponds to average income in South Carolina. As the number of containers goes up, so does the average income. All right, let's talk about criminal justice. What is not happening in the state of South Carolina? Our House Judicial Committee, which is responsible for 40% of the bills that go on to be debated by the House, is they are not doing anything about the criminal justice initiatives that were passed by a bipartisan equitable justice committee that met and formed legislation and submitted that legislation at the beginning of the year. That would include sentence reforming. That would include hate crimes bills strengthening and also dealing with civil asset forfeiture. None of those have been introduced to, they've either not been introduced to the committee by Speaker Jay Lucas, or they have not been put on the agenda. So what has been on the agenda for the Judiciary Committee, which contains our own John McCravey? Well, let's see. The fetal heartbeat bill, the open carry gun law, the Save Girls Sports bill, which would ban transgender girls from participating in school sports, and the Religious Worship Freedom Act, which would define churches as essential and therefore in a state of emergency. They would be free to be open if essential businesses are open. That's what our House Judicial Committee has been doing. I think that if this pattern continues, we'll see that this committee has been a bottleneck for criminal justice being improved in our state. Oh yeah, and then of course in the Senate there's this approving the firing squad as a humane alternative to the electric chair. South Carolina can't get chemicals anymore for the lethal injection execution. And so instead of working to try to get those chemicals, they go straight to okaying firing squads. Our own Senator Dick Harpootlian co-sponsored this bill because he says that as long as we have a Republican super majority in the General Assembly, we can't get rid of the death penalty. And until we can get rid of the death penalty, all means of execution have to be humane. And then on to environmental justice. Last year, the General Assembly voted to establish the Office of Resilience, which is the South Carolina version of dealing with climate change. But they never say climate change. It's always extreme weather or flooding. Representative Goldfinch of Murrells Inlet has authored that bill. When Henry McMaster submitted his budget this year, he did not fund it except to provide $250,000 to hire a director and an assistant. And so the budget writers in the State House have found $50 million to go to the Resilience Fund. And we are still waiting on McMaster to hire a new chief for this fund. Joint Committee also met with energy people in South Carolina to get reassurances that what happened in Texas during the deep freeze will not happen in South Carolina. Finally, I want to say that a bill that our own Senator Billy Garrett was interested in, Senate 525, known as the paralysis bill, it has been put aside. It will not come to the floor of the Senate for debate. Senator Garrett was interested in having advanced plastic recycling industry come to the McCormick area. This would involve melting of plastics, which is pyrolysis, which is very toxic and requires extremely close monitoring and regulation. And several environmental groups in South Carolina were sounding the alarm on this. So perhaps that's why this business and this bill are being put aside for the time being. So thank you for joining me for this update, and get out there and call your representatives and stay active. Thank you.